Alright, Amazon Games, let's be honest with ourselves, you kinda shit the bed with New World. I know, you're still working on it, putting out patches, fixing loads of bugs and design flaws, but how many players do you have now? Honestly? But hey, it's okay. Now you have Lost Ark. Sure, it's inherently pay to win, but you gotta get back all that money that you lost to New World refunds somehow, right? As someone who was there when the New World fell, I gotta say, Lost Ark is leagues above in quality. Intense action combat, interactive storytelling and gameplay, rewards for exploration and loads of collectibles, a great mix of solo and group content. Hell, you can even get a girlfriend, much easier than in real life, and they actually give you benefits and rewards. Lost Ark was probably the most anticipated MMO of the year, and the numbers show it. It broke records on Steam at launch and is holding an average concurrent player base of around 900,000, so yeah, the hype is real. Everyone and their mother is playing it right now. Most likely your favorite streamer is playing it live right now. Well, unless they're playing Elden Ring. So of course I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I downloaded it, created my gunner character as a Deadeye, and got to playing. And I gotta say, my first impression of the game was a bit underwhelmed. Lost Ark has a pretty slow start to it. It falls into the same traps that most MMORPGs do. Fetch quests, go kill this number of this enemy, or go talk to this person to find out what to do next. But where Lost Ark shines is in its bread and butter. Combat, storytelling, big monsters that look fucking cool, and its variation in optional gameplay. I wasn't joking about the girlfriend thing. You can actually romance NPCs in Lost Ark. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a casual review, a series where I test and review popular games so you can decide if you want to try them out. In this video, we're going to be discussing Lost Ark, the game with so much hype that I would be surprised if you haven't already tried it out, unless you're in the Netherlands or Belgium, who have banned the game due to loot box legislation. And that two-sentence description is the best way to set the tone for our entire review. Lost Ark is everyone's hope to finally play a decent new MMO, so much so that most people are willing to overlook the fact that it is completely pay to win. Before we begin, I want to thank you for watching. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel for more casual reviews. I'm also going to start streaming over on Twitch once a week, so go ahead and follow me over there if you'd like to come hang out. Also, this will be part 1 of an ongoing series for Lost Ark, so don't worry if I don't talk enough about the endgame. We will get there. Now, let's get into the first impressions review for Lost Ark. I feel like the best way to describe Lost Ark is that it's kind of a mix of a bunch of different MMOs. Technically, it's an MMO ARPG with a heavy emphasis on action combat, but let me for a second channel my inner IGN and tell you what it feels like. Lost Ark's intense action combat feels like a mix between Black Desert Online and Path of Exile. The sights and sounds and overall graphical design feel like a mix between Black Desert Online and Path of Exile. The localized dialogue and voiceover feels like a mix between Black Desert Online and my first YouTube video.
I have nothing to say to a demon.
I'm exaggerating, of course. Lost Ark is a Korean MMO ARPG, and it's going to have a lot of the common features and characteristics that come along with being one. What makes Lost Ark stand out is that it embraces these characteristics and builds on them. So first, let's talk about the ARPG part. Lost Ark has an overhead, semi-isometric view like most ARPGs. You use your character's combat abilities in fast-paced battles against large masses of enemies or big, cool-looking bosses. For normal minions, the action combat is smooth and satisfying with big, flashy abilities and combos to bring down entire armies at a time. The more enemies, the better. For big boss battles, the combat is strategic and engaging, having multiple phases, a stagger bar, and having a slight difficulty added to it that makes it necessary to manage your damage output with your damage mitigation. Another common ARPG characteristic is the amount of loot that you're given for killing hordes of monsters or big bosses, and how that loot interacts with your stats. Loot is everywhere, and as you go through the story, you are constantly upgrading your stats, giving you a consistent sense of progression. Lost Ark has also managed to make gearing while leveling fairly simple, by giving you enough information to understand your stats and what would be good for your character. They also show you stat comparison on items, which I know is a pretty common feature today, but not every game has this. It's something that you wouldn't really notice when it's there, but you definitely would notice if it wasn't. Either way, this means that if you are casually playing the game and you don't care about being super stat oriented, you'll still understand what's an upgrade for you. Okay, now let's talk about the Korean MMO characteristics of the game. MMOs that come out of Korea have a very distinct style to them. Black Desert Online, Blade and Soul, Terra, these are all Korean MMOs. Each of these games has an art style that is hypersexualized and over the top. They have gender-locked classes and usually have a detailed character creation menu. Along with style, Korean MMOs usually have a robust in-game shop that has a number of things to help you gain advantages in the game or give you a number of cosmetics to upgrade your looks. These features are generally more accepted in Korea, and it has become a staple to the genre. In the West, we don't usually see it the same way. Rather, we are used to hearing pay to win or seeing little girls in risque costumes and immediately getting a little weirded out. But now that the localization of MMOs from around the world has become a lot more common, the West is getting a bit more accepting of it. In comes Lost Ark with all of these features included in the game as it was in Korea. Lost Ark has a detailed character creation. It has gender-locked classes. Almost every single character is either intentionally ugly or a god or goddess in human form. Most importantly, Lost Ark has many advantages that you can purchase for real money from the in-game cash shop. Now, because this is a first impressions review and I haven't started with the end-game content, I don't want to comment too much on the pay-to-win aspect of Lost Ark. But what I can say is that Lost Ark doesn't try to hide that it's pay-to-win at all. One of the first things you're given in the game is something called a crystalline aura. This is basically a leveling boost that is time gated. The free one that you're given is for 3 days, and the purchasable one is for 30. The crystalline aura gives your character several bonuses, including free fast travel, bonuses to your character's stronghold, and a boost to experience gains along with a number of other small benefits. I don't need to study the shop and all the convoluted currencies and resources to know upfront that this is a pay-to-win feature. This is basically a sub fee, so either Lost Ark is pay-to-win or it's not free to play, whichever way you want to see it. But this is a much larger topic to cover since the pay-to-win aspect of Lost Ark is a complicated discussion, one that has actually piqued my interest since the popularity of the game indicates that the player base doesn't really mind that the game is so outwardly pay-to-win, but we will see how that affects the game in the long term. For now, let's get back to the review. Lost Ark has a ton of features smashed into a single game, and for the most part, I give them a lot of credit because the Lost Ark team really developed and provided a lot of different options to supplement your gameplay. To name a few, there's card collecting, seed collecting, upgrades to your armor and weapons, there's the romancing or rapport with NPCs, there's an entire island that you're given to run a stronghold that gives you benefits throughout the game. It also includes your very own butler that for some reason has legs twice the length of her body. There's a ton of stuff to do in this game, and it all gives you random benefits that contribute to your overall character's power or wealth. But for this first impressions review, I want to focus on the core gameplay. I'll talk about the side mechanics in a later review. To start the game, you choose your character, class, and subclass up front, and this is what made myself and many other people excited to play the game. The classes are pretty basic. You got your berserker and your sorcerer, you have a gun class called the gunner and the rogue class called the assassin, and you have a martial artist. The subclasses is where it gets pretty interesting. Each of these 5 classes has multiple subclasses. Each of these subclasses is incredibly different from one another, with different skills, different strengths and weaknesses, and very different playstyles. It almost begs the question, why don't you just choose these instead of your main class? Regardless, I think I may turn into an altaholic because I really want to try out all these classes. I won't go over all of them for the sake of time, but as an example, I picked the gunner class and chose the Deadeye subclass. That gave me the awesome gun-toting badass that you've seen in all the footage so far. I'm kind of in love with him. When you start out, you get most of your abilities and spells up front. You unlock some more as you level up, but at level 1, you start with the majority of your spells already on your spell bar. Instead, as you level, you get skill points, which you can spend on your skills to upgrade them and power them up in different ways. With enough points, you unlock a part of a skill tree that is specific to that one skill. You are given 3 options and you can choose 1 per tier. Some of these change your gameplay and others are just stat boosts, but I was pretty impressed with the variety. Each subclass also has a special ability skill that makes your combat even more dynamic. For example, the Deadeye's special ability is that he carries around 3 different guns, and you can switch between them at any time, even during combat. You have your dual pistols, which is your basic weapon with rapid fire abilities. You have your shotgun that deals heavy damage at short range, and a large caliber rifle that deals crazy damage at mid to long range, but it's a bit slower. And I'll just say now, holy crap, is the combat satisfying. There are combo skills. You have skills that are 1 button press, 2 button presses, or skill shots that require you to hold down the button for a specific amount of time, and with the gunner switching between 3 different weapons, each with their own ability set, I am never not pressing buttons, and I fucking love it. Look at my guy just blowing shit up, bullets flying all over the place, flipping around and killing masses of enemies like it's fucking nothing. It's so damn fun. Okay, let's talk about what you do with this awesome power. Lost Ark is heavily story-based, which means that your leveling experience is basically linear. There is a main story quest that has you go through cinematic sequences and play a part in large events. While you follow the main story quest, you are also given the option of a couple of side quests to give more XP and provide some extra stuff to do within that same location. Questing is not that great. I'm just gonna be pretty upfront about it. It slows down the pace of the game and introduces a weird lull in an otherwise badass player story. We'll get to that in a second. While questing, you come to a number of dungeons that are really the highlight of the game. You can play them alone or with a group and complete them on normal or hard difficulty. These dungeons are mini scenarios that have great combat, story-based cutscenes, and incredible bosses that take strategy and coordination to complete. And what's great is that the dungeons only get better as the game progresses. Bosses get more difficult and engaging, the story gets tolerable and in some parts pretty enjoyable. The gameplay is a lot more dynamic, even at one point having you fight a huge demon while climbing a spiraling staircase. Dungeons really are the best the game has to offer during your leveling journey. So while you're leveling, you have a pretty simple gameplay loop. Complete some minor fetch and kill quests until you hit a story beat that requires a dungeon or scenario, then go back to completing minor fetch and kill quests. It's pretty basic and pretty characteristic of an MMO ARPG, but now let me tell you about my favorite part of the game so far. Not the story itself, but the execution of the storytelling. One of the problems that a lot of MMORPGs face is that it's tough to deliver a good storytelling experience while under the constraints of all the features and mechanics that MMORPGs are known for. Here's one example of many. How do you tell a good story if your quests are go here and talk to this dude, go kill X amount of this monster, go press a button to collect 5 of this item? Your story experience ends up hurting because your badass godlike warrior who can destroy entire armies on his own is being asked to go help farmers sort out their family issues. This actually happens in Lost Ark, and it's one of the problems I think the leveling experience faces. The monotonous questing experience that asks you to perform menial tasks for random people detracts from the importance of your character taking part in major story beats. Did you just kill a demon single-handedly that took out an entire city in a blaze of fire and destruction? Great! Can you also kill some boars for me? We need some boar meat. This is a common trap that MMORPGs usually face, and Lost Ark is no different. So what is it that I like so much about the storytelling? Well, to put it simply, it's how good the highs are compared to the lows. Lost Ark finds a way to execute the story in brilliant cinematic ways. The story itself isn't amazing, it's not that bad, but it takes a while to get interesting. The execution of the story is what I think Lost Ark does well. There are cinematic camera angles in both cutscenes and during your gameplay, detailed environments and music that fit the tone of the story or quest that you're on. Most character models are detailed, and cutscenes are rendered in the in-game engine, so there isn't much of a disconnect between what you have control over and what is being shown to you. Even little things like having to press the action button to jump over gaps or cross beams is a nice touch. It may seem like a small thing, but having that sort of interaction keeps you engaged and breaks up otherwise boring travel sequences that a lot of MMOs definitely have. There are only 2 things that I think Lost Ark suffers from in terms of executing the story. First, the story doesn't become actually engaging until about 25 levels into the game. Up until this point, your character is a badass, but a lot of the story is a bit generic. Big bad demon guy fighting against a priest and something about a lost ark. The visuals are cool, but it's nothing crazy attention grabbing. The first 25 levels also suffer from having to be a bit easier so that you can learn the game and build your character's power to feel like you're progressing to perform bigger and cooler actions. Then out of nowhere, you were hit with one of the coolest in-game cinematics and quests I've ever seen, and immediately the story started to resonate with me. I'll try to keep away from spoilers, but just watch this small cutscene.
Leeches. We'd better do something about them. There's a magic barrier here. It'll be nearly impossible to break down the gate as it is.
Yeah, someone jumped inside.
Alone? Who would be so bold?
This whole siege scenario was completely and insanely phenomenal. You got to lay siege to an entire castle wall pretty much on your own, and when your friends couldn't get past the castle gate, you get to ride down on a chain and jump into an entire army battalion to open the doors on your own. The music is all blaring and that sound effect plays when the time slows. Someone actually says, "Who would be so crazy?" And it quite literally got me to sit up in my chair. Then you finish with 2 boss battles that aren't very hard, but definitely feel like they have more importance since you had to siege an entire castle just to get to them. Such an awesome quest and storytelling execution. Rule of Cool in full effect. But after that quest, you continue on in your journey to find the Ark. And for some reason, that leads you to talking to a bunch of farmers and helping some farmer bros solve some personal family issues. Back to the monotonous questing for a bit. The second problem Lost Ark has with story execution is the voiceover for the English localization. I'm sorry, but it doesn't sound good. Some of the characters are voiced fairly well, but those are mainly the important characters, and each scene is a hit and miss. I also think that maybe the voice recordings were taken on different equipment or something, because some of the audio quality tends to range a bit. I've said it before in my other reviews, I don't like criticizing voiceovers. It's not the native language of the game, and therefore I don't feel that it reflects on the game itself, but rather the localization team. It just so happens that the localization team is Amazon Games, who, I don't know if you know this, is backed by Big Bezos and the whole of Amazon, so you'll have to forgive me if I feel like they should have a bit more budget to maybe ask some of these voice actors to do a second take, or maybe provide them with better audio equipment. That's just my opinion, and if you try out the game and you like the voiceovers, more power to you. I just didn't feel like A+ grade to match the quality of the rest of the game. So the last thing I'll talk about in my first impressions review will be pretty quick. I just wanted to point out how rampant botting and gold selling is in the game. I'm pretty sure every time I logged in or decided to look at chat in the city, there was at least one person spamming a gold selling site. Listen, I'm used to seeing stuff like this and it's kind of funny at this point. There's also an extreme amount of bots running around in the leveling zones. I mean, I'm sure it's hard to tell, but trust me, these are bots. I can't definitively prove it, but with my experience in playing MMOs for an extremely long time, I have trained in and studied the art of spotting bots. Watch how the bots move, how they flicker into and out of existence, how they can run faster than my mount will carry me, and how they never seem to have a name that makes any logical sense in any language. Watch how the elusive bots try to cloak themselves from the system by expertly traversing this large elevator. My keen eye has found us a botter. But no one really bats an eye at these things. I haven't played enough to understand if the gold selling or botting is ruining the economy or any other parts of the game. I just think it's funny to come into a game and immediately see an unopposed league of botters running around while I'm leveling at a much slower rate. I'll have to do some research into this and see down the line how the game is affected, but for now, let's close with some parting thoughts. It's really no longer a question at this point. I feel like if you haven't succumbed to the intense hype around the game, then the continued praise that it's getting will definitely have you try it out. In my opinion, the combat and the storytelling execution is enough on its own to make the game worth it. The combat feels so satisfying, and in the moments where the story and the combat and the bosses and the music and the detailed environment all come together, even though it's not perfect, it genuinely gets you excited to play. This game is free to try, and even though it's pay to win, you can definitely justify giving the game a go to purely experience the excitement that everyone's talking about. Hell, even if you just want to upgrade your stronghold and build rapport with every NPC in the game, do it. Unless you're in the Netherlands or Belgium, sorry again. I've said it throughout the review, the game isn't perfect. The localization is pretty bad, and the questing system is so basic that new players may not make it to level 25 to experience the game getting better. And even after level 25, you still ride a roller coaster of questing lows and dungeon highs. There's also the conversation of pay to win that will definitely start affecting me as I make my way to endgame. As of writing this review, I'm sitting around level 40, so I still have a small amount of leveling to do before I get to endgame content. As far as impressions go, I think the hype and the promise of a better endgame is what is really driving people to get past the first 25 levels of the game. But here's what I'll say. I play MMOs a lot. Just for the casual review series so far, I've played Path of Exile, Blade and Soul, Warframe, Albion Online, and Old School RuneScape. And I gotta say, so far Lost Ark has given me probably the best first impression out of all of these games. I'm not saying that Lost Ark is my favorite MMO, but just that the game isn't too harsh on new players who are trying to get into the game. It's easy to pick up and the leveling is quick to get you to flashy, rule of cool moments where you can enjoy the deeply satisfying feeling that killing mass amounts of enemies with terrifying power gives you. So I definitely recommend you try the game out. I'm going to continue to play and I'll post an updated review once I experience some of the endgame and more of the side features that the game has to offer. And if you played Lost Ark, I want to know your experience. Do you agree with what I'm saying, or do you think this is the worst game since New World? Let me know in the comments, but most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe to the channel for more content. I wish you the best with your Lost Ark adventures, sorry Netherlands and Belgium, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.